Hello, this is Daryl. Thank you for downloading the Total Soccer Show. On today's show, we're going to talk about the World Cup draw, which happens this Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. We're going to sort of preview how the draw works and what to look out for. We're also going to make the case there is no possible group of death. No possible group of death this year. Also on today's show, we're going to talk about Americans in Germany and the how and the why. We're going to talk about pro-rel based on attendance. We're going to talk about team photos and the etiquette involved, US national team players becoming coaches, and what we suggest for someone who wants to get back into playing soccer but lives in rural Kansas. Today's show is sponsored by Fucci, makers of the Soccer Rebounder. Fucci are longtime sponsors of the Total Soccer Show. The Rebounder is something you can play on your own just for fun or to work on your technique, or play against a friend or co-host and see if you can beat them as you bounce the ball off the rebounder, landed in the court until someone misses. If you want to get a discount, you go to playfucci.com. You use the discount code TSS2017, that's TSS 2017, for $20.17 off of your Fucci rebounder, as well as the holiday special they are already running. So go to playfucci.com. The link will be in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who comes straight from pot one. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, I like my odds there. That seems like a better space to be in than pot four for sure.
So we're going to do a World Cup 2018 draw preview today. We're not going to do a mock draw or anything like that. We won't make you sit through that. You're going to have to sit through that on Friday. As it is.
Yes, you're also going to have to sit through their inevitable hour-long pre-roll and breaking stuff up with random tangents that don't need to be included.
And some weird musical performances, I'm going to guess, will also be in there.
Yep.
So listener questions later in today's show. But first, we are going to talk World Cup preview. The draw is Friday. It's 10 a.m. Eastern in the United States, and it's on Fox Sports 1 is where it will be televised. If you want to cheat and watch at work, I think you can get it streamed on FIFA.com. They normally have something you can watch there as well.
I have a
Definitely
feeling,
cheat at work and watch it.
I have a feeling most of our listeners will be slightly less inclined to watch this draw than they were the previous iteration.
Yes. Okay. So we'll hit the big elephant not in the room, which is that the United States obviously will not be part of this. I don't really know how else to address this other than to maybe prepare yourself. Mm-hmm. Don't be thinking, maybe they'll accidentally draw the US out and we'll just sneak into a group.
Yeah, again.
Group D has 5 teams. Shh, no one tell anyone.
I mean, I know some people out there, we can touch on this in a minute. I know some people out there are trying to find scenarios in which the United States could be involved.
Yeah.
The short answer there is none.
Yeah, so there is a story floating around that the Peruvian government is going to sort of interfere in Peruvian soccer, and that would trigger a FIFA thing where you get banned from international football if your government is involved in your running of soccer. And then somehow the United States would get to replace Peru.
Yes.
The reason you should not get excited about that is, one, if that did happen, Peru would almost definitely be replaced by a CONMEBOL team, right? Which would be Chile, I believe, is the team that just missed out. 2, the Peruvian government... don't know much about Peruvian politics, but I know no government on earth is dumb enough to disqualify their own team from the World Cup.
Well,
that is a way to have a revolution on your hands.
I'd say some are, probably not Peru's. Yeah.
Some are, but not the Peruvian government. Yeah. It would not poll well, put it that way.
This is very, very true. Yeah, but to your point, I think it will get resolved. I don't think it will be an issue for Peru. But yeah, if it were, I think the article that I read said it could be the USA or it could be Italy, and the justification was FIFA like money, and the United States is guaranteed to bring money, and Italy have won the World Cup previously.
It wasn't convincing. No. It was websites looking for clicks, right?
Exactly.
And I'll bet a lot. I mean, I clicked on it to think, to read what is all this about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to go back to it then, so the United States won't be involved. And again, this is where I keep saying it's going to be like running into your ex that you still haven't quite gotten over. It's going to keep being like that. When you see those friendlies, when you see the draw, you're going to see the other teams that are there instead of the United States and how happy they look. And, you wonder if they think about you anymore.
This Friday is going to be the first bit of heartbreak since October 10th, isn't it? It's going to be the first time it's going to really hit home. The only thing,
and I don't want to make it worse, but Panama doesn't think about us anymore, guys.
Panama in pot 4, by the way.
Yeah.
So I guess the way I would phrase this is to try and enjoy it for what it is and just start thinking about the World Cup as a World Cup that you can just watch to watch the soccer and not think about the United States. I mean, that's how I'm sort of compartmentalizing it.
I mean, it's definitely like
I've got England as well to lean on.
There is that in part one. Oh, no, part two. Excuse me. Part two.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Could be rough.
We'll explain the parts in a minute as part of our preview.
Sounds good. But there is that thing like that we talk about when we watch USA games live, where it sort of is like in the moment there's emotion wrapped around it, so it's tougher to like really just sit back and observe what's happening. And I feel like this is the same case that in 2014, or I guess 2013, when the draw happened for the 2014 tournament, I was like all nerves. So I wasn't really paying attention to anything else. It was just like, we could get a terrible group, and we did. So with that not in the equation, at least there's that. You can sort of sit back and be like, oh, that's not going to be fun for Senegal.
So you can kind of watch this somewhat dispassionately and just, observe it as opposed to have your heart wrapped up in it.
Exactly.
Okay. Should we talk about how it's going to work?
Sure.
So I'm sure you've seen, if you're listening to this show, I'm sure you've seen a soccer draw before, right? It's usually pulling sort of ping pong ball type things out of pots and placing them into groups, right? There are 8 groups, 32 teams, 4 teams in each group.
And then you've got to make sure somebody heats the balls so that it can be rigged, right?
That could happen. So first thing to note is that Russia in pot 1, there are 8 teams in pot 1. Russia's ball will be red. Don't get thinking that is some sort of cheating thing. That's because they're the host nation. Yeah. So the way this works is 4 parts, and it's essentially divided in terms of tiers of FIFA World Ranking. Of part 1 are the highest, 2, 3, 4 down to the lowest. The exception is Russia, who as hosts get into part 1, even though their national soccer team is terrible.
This is true.
Terrible.
On both accounts.
So this is a tournament where you want to get drawn with the host. They are easily the worst team in part 1. Yes, they are.
Yeah, I think they definitely are.
I watched Wilfried Zaha tear the entire team apart on his own.
Yes, but to bring all that back together then, so basically you still have to go through the mechanism of the draw.
Yeah.
So even though it's guaranteed Russia will be drawn first because the host nation always plays the opening game, that's why that ball will be red.
Yes.
So it's clearly identifiable, so they can be A1.
Yeah.
It would be awesome if whoever did the draw was just like, nah, I'm drawing something else instead.
Speaking of who's doing the draw, it's Gary Lineker.
It is.
Gary Lineker, my sort of hero growing up. He was like England's goal scorer. Now he presents BBC Match of the Day. I think people will recognise. He's appeared on NBC quite a lot to do their Premier League coverage, right? So people will recognise him.
I really enjoyed that the Telegraph's coverage of this was like, who's hosting? And they posted a photo of Gary Lineker ironing in a bathrobe. And then the caption was, Gary Lineker will be hosting, presumably fully clothed.
His co-host will be a Russian sports journalist whose name I wrote down is Maria Komandnaya.
Okay.
Maria Komandnaya will be sort of Gary Lineker's co-host.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So here's how it's going to go. Yeah, they'll draw the balls. They'll have 8 groups. We'll have one of the pot 1 teams at the very head of it. Then it gets interesting because then you start seeing who gets paired with whom, I'm going to say. The teams in part 2...
Subject and object, baby. Subject and object.
The teams in part 2 to sort of get excited about because you're going to be matched with a bigger team, I would argue, are Spain. Spain are in part 2. And England, maybe that's a little biased on my part, but they're one of the better teams in part 2. And then Mexico, if you're a CONCACAF, Mexico are in part 2 as well, so you're going to see them paired up with someone. So that's where it gets interesting.
I think people also might be inclined to avoid Colombia and Uruguay. But
yeah, they would. But yeah, I'm talking about like the big names, especially in terms of our region. Fair?
Yep.
Okay, and then after that, there's genuinely sort of less star wattage in part 3 and part 4. You and I were talking beforehand about how there is going to be no group of death.
No, and
group of death.
And there will be somebody trying to argue that there is, because there will be one group that is
harder than the others.
Harder than the other ones, just by nature of one group being harder than the other ones. That's how it always is. But there isn't that one. See, and it's interesting because I've never really categorized it in the way that you have, and now hearing you explain what makes a group of death, I'm like, oh, okay, I get that, and I get why you think there rarely is a group of death.
Oh, we talked about this off air. Yeah. Right? My argument is...
because I just tend to think that it's like, I want my emotional one to come first before your academic and reasoned one comes. But mine is more like, oh, that one looks really, really tough, and that team's really good, and that team's really good, and that team's really good. But when you go down that road, you can do exactly what I did with pot 2, where suddenly I'm like, well, Uruguay and Colombia are really good.
Yeah.
So maybe they're a group of death, and then it can be too easy, whereas your point is...
So yeah, the group of death, the original phrase, as I understand it, is only 2 teams go through, which means 2 teams go out. So whenever there were 3 teams who would reasonably always expect to reach the second round in a group where only 2 go through, that's the group of death, because it means one big team is going out. In this case, pot 3 and pot 4 does not have a team which can reasonably say, we expect to go through every time, right? There is no Germany or Spain or France or England or Brazil or Argentina in pot 3 or pot 4.
Right.
Like Serbia are a good team in pot 4. Japan are a good team in pot 4. Those teams do not expect to make the second round. Like Japan, I think, are like a 50-50 record, right? It's like group stage or round of 16. So I'm going to say right now, it is mathematically impossible for there to be a group of death.
I think so. That does not mean that there won't still be articles written about how
Definitely.
this is either
And you
the
should
group of
not
death or
click
this
on
is
any
like
of them.
the dark horse group of death.
Yeah. I'm hoping we can just avoid that phrase entirely this year.
We won't. No way. Because there's going to be so many articles written about who the dark horse team is and how they look so good in qualifying. And then inevitably some of them will do well and some of them will be knocked out in the group stage because that's how it works.
Is there anything else we need to mention? Oh, there is a geographical sort of... what's the word? A geographical caveat to as the groups are drawn. FIFA have said that there will be no team from the same confederation in the same group as each other, right? So there will not be a group with, say, Brazil and Colombia because they will keep those separated. The exception is UEFA because there are so many European teams. There's a maximum of 2 European teams per group. So what they'll do is they'll just like skip a group. If Colombia were drawn into the same group as Brazil, they'll just put Colombia in their next group over.
Right. And so what that means then is that like if you have that first draw, as we talked about the red ball, if you have Russia first and then say the next one would be Spain from pot 2, if it's Russia and Spain in the same group, then that's it. No more European teams.
Yes.
So then that kind of limits who they can get in the
and
third
also
and fourth round.
Celebrations in Spain.
Yes.
Celebrations in Spain. Because if you draw Russia, or I would argue Poland from pot 1, you've done pretty well.
Yeah.
Because you've avoided Brazil, Germany, Argentina, etc.
I would bet money that Russia do not get Spain. I would say maybe Russia end up with Peru.
Are you thinking there's some sort of fix on?
No, of course not, Daryl. Definitely not. And as I glance around the room to make sure our Russian overlords aren't watching anything, they're wonderful and all will be fine with the World Cup.
I mean, we're making recordings of our conversation, so I think they've got us covered.
Please don't rendition me.
So, genuinely, I don't think the draw for the World Cup is fixed. I do think there's some bribery going on with who hosts it. That may be how Russia got it to begin with, but we're here now and it's too late.
Yeah,
it's
I feel like we're past the point of allegedly on that one.
Yeah. I mean, not legally, but yeah.
I'm fine with that. No, I mean, I think what tends to happen is, for whatever reason, some teams occasionally get like the best draw.
Oh, we're talking about the draw, not the host.
Yeah, and then it becomes sort of like, oh, they always get a good draw.
I think that's because they're the best team and they always look stronger because they are stronger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I do think a thing that could happen is with Gary Lineker, former England striker, doing the draw. The power of narrative suggests that he'll probably end up drawing England with Germany. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Just because he played against Germany a bunch of times, World Cup semi-final 1990, for example. I can just definitely see that playing out because why wouldn't it? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I'm also curious, like if you did because there's that map, the famous map of like countries that England has not invaded, and there are far fewer countries that it hasn't invaded than has. I was about to be like, what's the group with like England already has like history with? And the answer is probably most of the teams eligible to play in the World Cup.
By history, do you mean wars or anything?
Yes.
Like, for example, would you say that England has invaded Germany?
I mean,
on D-Day, kind of?
I mean, yeah. I'm pretty sure there were some British soldiers in there.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm sure there were. I just didn't know if you meant...
Well, that was France.
I didn't know if you meant
still,
British Empire style or...
Oh, yeah, I mean British Empire style. Yes.
Okay.
And again, to clarify, people, we know that D-Day was not Britain and the United States invading Germany. Just put that out there.
But we got there eventually.
Eventually, yeah.
Okay.
We got there. Hey, buddy, we're friends.
Yeah. We're allies, right?
Yep.
Anything else on the World Cup, Taylor?
No, other than that, I mean, I think, again, it will be weird, but I would strongly encourage people not to avoid this. That doesn't mean necessarily...
it's part of exposure therapy, right? Like, immerse yourself in it, get used to it, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't mean, like, you have to watch it live or stream it or whatever like that. I don't want people to get fired. But I'm just saying, like, don't avoid it and be like, oh, I'll look at it later on when I feel like dealing with the World Cup. Like, just check it out tomorrow, see who got who. Get a little bit excited, because maybe it will be, like England getting Germany. It should be who got whom. I apologize. Maybe England will get Germany, and that will be exciting.
Spain get Brazil, as we keep saying.
Yeah, I mean, or Brazil, England, that would be exciting. So, like, just, like, see who's in there, see who gets drawn with whom, and then start getting a little bit excited about next summer.
Yeah, and this is like easing your toe into the water so that it's not a shock to you when the actual World Cup rolls around. Think of it like that. It's like a training exercise for watching the World Cup without the United States.
I might go more with like physical therapy to recover from a horrific injury, but yeah, sure. I take your point.
Okay, before we move on to listener questions, we have a sponsor on today's show.
We sure do.
Today's sponsor is the one I'm always excited about. It's Squarespace. They host our website. They should host yours too.
I think that should probably be their slogan from now on.
We host Total Soccer Show. We should host yours too.
We'll give that to them.
So if you go to TotalSoccerShow.com, you can take a look, see what we did with Squarespace, and just know that behind the scenes, we can move things around, we can add things, and it's all way easier than it's ever been because Squarespace is my favorite host.
I also appreciate...
Except for you, Tyler.
I also appreciate that, like, they've made it
you missed my joke.
I know. I chose to overlook it. I appreciate that they've made it even easier than it was a couple years ago, and I think maybe we've gotten a little bit better. But I remember when we first started, we were sort of like, this seems like a lot, but really, like, it wasn't. It was just, like, Squarespace, it can be a little bit daunting at first, but they have so many people, like, there to help you and explain how things work. Service. And that's the key thing, right, is I think that we just didn't look into that, and so we were like, oh, this can be a bit much. But looking at it again when we've done it, we're like, oh, my gosh, this is really easy and so much easier, and that updates. And this is, like, easier to install, and suddenly our website looks way better and is way more functional.
Drag and drop and type and insert the links, and away you go. So I was thinking, this is a good year.
Actually, sorry, and I wanted to add with that to your point that, like, I remember when we were initially building the website that we had to, like, look around and hunt for, like, the template that we wanted to use, and then that wouldn't be available for the provider we were using, and it was a whole big thing. With Squarespace, they have
the unnamed provider we were using.
But they exactly. But they have, like, beautiful templates from world-class designers that makes it that much easier just to be like, yep, I want that one. I also want that one. If anything, you run into the problem of having too many templates you want to utilize.
I would also say now is a good time to start a soccer website. Obviously, you could use Squarespace for a business or a photography portfolio or whatever you're doing, but now is a good time for a soccer website. There's the rise of independent soccer media. I would also say maybe there'll be fewer big websites going heavy on the World Cup in the United States because the US isn't there. It leaves a gap for some independent coverage in the United States. It's also maybe a time for again, I think I've said this before, it's a time for getting excited about the next wave of US talent, right? The Jonathan Gonzalez, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams team that I keep dreaming of. Now is the time to sort of get in at the beginning of the cycle and start covering the team.
And if you've ever really, like, wanted to get emails from anonymous people offering to advertise gambling websites gambling sites on your website, then that's really the best way to do it, is by getting your site up and running. You'll get one of those within the first month, I'd say.
That is a thing you can do, yeah. But if you want to launch your Squarespace website, you go to squarespace.com. You get a free trial. This is the important part. You get a free trial where you can sort of start building the website at zero cost. Then when you're ready to launch it, you use the offer code TSS, 3 letters, TSS. You get 10% off your first purchase of a website through Squarespace.
There we are. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's show and genuinely making our website look better. Worth noting, we chose to go with Squarespace before they chose to advertise on the show.
Yes.
So this is not us just endorsing a product because suddenly we're talking.
It's perfect. It's a product we already use and then we get to endorse.
Exactly.
The circle of life.
It's beautiful.
By the way, I've just noticed you've got a bit of a little Sebastian thing going on over there.
What do you mean?
You're a little horse.
A little bit. That was outstanding, and I didn't see it coming, and when it came through, I've never been happier or prouder of you.
I'll be honest, I was thinking about it from the start of the show, but I thought, I'll let him talk for 15 minutes so it gets worse and more noticeable, and then I'll drop the joke in there.
Thanks for that. So you just kept me talking? That's what it was? You just knew I'd keep running my mouth? Yep. Perfect. Thanks, Daryl. You're a true friend.
Well, we'll see how it goes when we've got 5 questions to answer, 5 great listener questions.
We sure do. Why don't you read the first one while I drink my fizzy water?
First one is from Patrick Kennedy. So, Patrick Kennedy, we should say full disclosure, is a friend of ours. We met him through listening to the show, I think, but it's been so... You know, you've known someone so long.
He's certainly a casual acquaintance.
He certainly is. Patrick's a friend and teammate of ours. But that doesn't mean we won't answer his questions, right?
Also, if you've seen any of my woodworking from all of the various projects I've done around my house, most of those utilized either Patrick's expertise or his actual tools. So yes, Patrick is a friend.
Patrick's question: do you think Klinsmann had anything to do with the fact so many of our young players are playing in Germany?
Mm-hmm. So,
what do you think, Tyler?
I think in the past I would have said not really. Like he doesn't have much influence at all. I would say there are certain exceptions now where I think he probably did have some influence.
Okay.
And I think maybe that's because Jordan Morris sticks in my head as basically...
He didn't go.
He did not. But it's that sort of like the story became that it was like Herzog and Klinsmann called him up, said like, hey, give him a trial. And they're like, sure, we know you. Yeah, and I do feel like he had...
I think Herzog used to play for Bremen, so he had links there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think like those connections, I do think they could open doors and get people trials that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been able to get. And like I would say, for example, that if Klinsmann had been the U.S. manager back when like Jay Demerit was riding his bicycle around Europe trying to find a club, he probably would have gotten a trial or two more because Klinsmann would have been able to call a club and said, "Hey, I'm vouching for this defender. Give him a chance." That said, I don't think there are many people who can say, like, I am playing in Germany right now because Jurgen Klinsmann was the U.S. coach.
I think that's true. I also think the history of American players playing in Germany goes way before Jurgen Klinsmann's involvement with U.S. soccer, right?
Okay.
Eric Winaldo was over there back in the day. You know, Steve Cherundolo was there long before Jurgen Klinsmann was coach.
Who's the Champions League outlier whenever we want to talk about DeMarcus Beasley?
Jovan Kirovski.
There it is.
Yeah, was there long before. I mean, Klinsmann was playing at the same time as Kirovski, right? So I also think this is about German-American cultural relations, which are sort of because of post-World War II. You know, US has army bases there, or like in West Germany, still has a presence there. There's a real cultural link between Germany and the United States that goes beyond Jurgen Klinsmann. I honestly think that's a lot of the reason why a lot of young players are going there.
I agree. I would say they probably would prefer you say the western part of Germany nowadays.
Yes, my apologies. Yeah.
Unless you know something I don't.
It's coming back.
It's the Simpsons joke where the Soviet Union was just laying in wait.
It will be unveiled at the World Cup draw, no doubt.
Do you remember what I'm talking about where like that's the joke, is that the Soviet Union has actually been waiting, and like Lenin is still alive and smashes through his tomb and marches around Soviet.
I do remember
like a
that.
zombie.
Yeah.
Berlin Wall pops right back up.
Oh god! It's not entirely funny because it's not entirely untrue right now.
Yeah, let's move on quickly, shall we? Once again, before we anger our Russian overlords.
The one thing I did do is look into recent players moving to Germany to see if there was any coincidence. Christian Pulisic moved to Dortmund essentially because his family did the work. Like literally, his agent is just listed as family members, right? Because his dad is an assistant soccer coach at Rochester. His grandfather was a player, Croatian player, or I guess Yugoslavian at the time. Then Weston McKennie is one I looked into because he moved a couple of years ago to Schalke from Dallas. But Weston McKennie has his own German links, which is that his father was in the
Air
US
Force.
Military.
Yeah.
Air Force, same thing?
Yeah.
I never know the terminology.
Armed Forces.
Sorry.
Is your generic coverall.
McKennie spent a few years in Kaiserslautern as a kid, so he has that exposure to Germany. And his agent, I found out, is Corey Gibbs. Weston McKennie's agent is Corey Gibbs.
Circle of life.
Circle of life. So there's a chance some of our listeners won't know who Corey Gibbs is. He was a US centre-back who played in Germany, played in the Netherlands, I think he was in England, didn't play in England for Charlton, and in Major League Soccer, retired early through injury. But the reason that players are going to Germany is because of people like Corey Gibbs.
Yeah. You know, and Corey Gibbs was there because Angela Merkel invited him.
That is not true, because he was there long before. So essentially my bigger point is that there's lots of other US-Germany links that go beyond Klinsmann. It may be that behind the scenes he made some connections and we don't know about it.
I would guess that there was probably a lot of that sort of like either him making connections or simply as the coach of the national team saying like, yeah, you should go to Germany. Like versus like maybe like choose Germany over going to the Premier League or going to like staying in Major League Soccer or something like that.
Or he could have been like, oh, maybe talk to this guy in that town. I've got his phone number. Or giving players little nudges towards teams. But I don't think there's any move that I know of that Klinsmann 100% orchestrated in his role as US soccer coach, at least not one that worked out. Looking at you, Jordan Morris, and I'm sure your dog is lovely. So I'm talking a lot on this, but the one thing I would say is you do give him credit for German Americans who chose to represent the United States. I'm thinking specifically of Julian Green. Maybe the circumstances around that are not happy for everybody.
Correct.
But he chose the US essentially because of the connection with Klinsmann. And I want to say Gedeon Zellerlem, it seemed easier to persuade him to represent the United States. And I think Klinsmann may have had something to do with that as well.
Yes. But I would say even to that point, like with dual nationals, the biggest one, the first one I would say in my mind from Germany coming over was Jermaine Jones. That happened under Bob Bradley, not Michael Bradley. So even there, like there is some of that kind of like pre-existing history that comes before Jurgen Klinsmann.
Okay. Next question. I think we answered that very thoroughly.
I think so.
Yeah. Patrick will let us know if we did.
Yeah. Comes from Shelley Parnes, who says, I know this is a crazy idea, but what do you think of determining pro rel based on the team's attendance? For example, the top 20 teams with the highest average game attendance are Division 1, the next 20 teams are Division 2, and so forth.
What do we think about this, Taylor? I think it would be an interesting way to...
Get ready for ticket giveaways.
Yeah, it would be an easy system to game, right?
Yeah.
You could just... I mean, one, you're sort of constrained by the size of your stadium, but you could build as big a stadium as you want. And in the quest for promotion, you could, instead of investing in, say, good players, you could invest in, giving subsidized tickets or cheap tickets, or literally paying people to fill your stadium.
You could, but you're also seeing it from the perspective of money.
I can't believe that let's pick a team at random. I can't believe that Toronto FC have 100,000 at every home game.
Well, but see, okay, but actually that's a good, like, we'll go with Toronto FC, for example. Like, but that's an established club. And you're kind of approaching this with the idea of, like, they've got money to burn. So clubs who don't need to depend on, like, game day revenue could get away with that.
Yeah.
But smaller clubs can't do that. You can't build a bigger stadium if you don't have the money.
Yeah.
And so what you're going to end up doing is basically pricing smaller teams out because they can't expand. They can't give away free tickets. So they might have 5,000 paying people in attendance, and Toronto FC might have 3,000 people paying, but because they're selling out 50,000 seats because they're giving a bunch of tickets away. Not saying that's what Toronto are doing now, but it's what they could do in order to stay top. Yeah.
Right. So maybe you could regulate this to make it so that you have some language that it has to be a genuine ticket sale.
I just like the idea of, like, you go back to the old school days if you just have people at the turnstile with clickers.
Yeah,
and
clickers.
It's like, But even then, you could have the giving away tickets. I don't know how you do it.
You could just pay the clicker guy to just keep clicking.
Also that. There's lots of loopholes here. It would require a lot of paperwork.
So we're saying this is not a great idea. And to be fair, Shelley started with, I know this is a crazy idea, but is that kind of this is how US soccer does it at the moment, right? They look at, like, size of market and all those other factors they take into account. Like, you have to have this size seat at stadium, you have to have this much money in the bank, or your owner has to have this much money. Yeah. That is how they do division alignment right now. So it's one thing to say it's crazy. It's another thing to say it's kind of happening right now.
I think it's not crazy to suggest it. I think the issue there is that to have it be the end-all, be-all, it removes a lot of other factors. What I do think would be interesting is if you used it as an incentive. So say it was like if you're talking about Major League Soccer, for example, like the team that has the best average attendance gets to host the All-Star game next season. Like, and you kind of keep it like that. If you did, like, little wrinkles, or like best attendance gets a play-in shot in the playoffs or something like just to add a little wrinkle in there. I think that makes a little bit more sense to incentivize teams to lower ticket prices because that encourages more people to come, and then to keep more people coming rather than just like, we'll give them away because we know we've got money coming in and whatever. It doesn't matter.
Do you know which team finished top of the 2017 MLS average attendance table? I do because I looked it up.
I could take a guess here, and I feel like I could be totally wrong because maybe I'm skewed by end-of-season results, but I would say Atlanta, maybe?
Yes.
And then maybe Seattle?
Atlanta. Have you looked it up?
No.
Atlanta averaged 48,220. Seattle averaged 43,666. But what both those teams have in common is that they sell out a 30 and 40,000 like regular seat thing, but for big games they can open up the top tier and like add another 30k. You know what I mean? So they can really bump their average up by super expanding in a way that other teams, like I don't think, say, Sporting KC can't just be like, we're going to put an extra tier on top of the stadium for this big game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm genuinely trying to think of who number 3 would be, though, and I don't think I can do it.
It's not American.
Oh, Toronto?
Yep.
There we go.
Toronto FC with 27,647. So there's quite a drop-off.
Yes, there is.
From what I'm going to call the Champions League places down to third place.
And I'm guessing I can guess
TFC.
the bottom part of that table as well.
Can you guess the bottom 2? I wrote down the bottom 2. No, 21st and 22nd.
For this season?
Yep, for 2017.
I'm going to say were FC Dallas near the bottom because of all the renovations they were doing?
They were bottom, 15,122. But there was an asterisk next to the number. That's why.
Okay. And then I'm going to say, sadly, probably Columbus?
No.
Okay.
Colorado Rapids.
Okay.
Colorado Rapids were 21st with 15,322.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. See, there we go. So Colorado should move to Austin? Is that what we're saying? Is that how it works?
Outside of MLS.
I'm just kidding, Rapids fans. Please don't email.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't want any part of that.
It was Daryl's idea. He put me up to it.
So I looked at the NASL average attendance. There is no one with over 10,000. The best average attendance in NASL is Indy 11 with 8,395. It's a healthy crowd in Indy. They seem like a really well-run team to me. In USL...
I can guess.
Can you guess the top team in USL?
FC Cincinnati.
FC Cincinnati with 21,198 average attendance.
And then Richmond Kickers just behind that.
Richmond Kickers were 10th with 4,665. Second was Sac Republic with 11,569.
That would have been my guess.
I feel like I'm just listing numbers at this point, which might not be that interesting. But maybe it's worth thinking about how these divisions would align.
I mean,
FC Cincinnati would crack the top 20.
They would, and I think it's then kind of funny to go back to the initial question and how it's like, it's crazy, but then also this is kind of how they're expanding, is that Cincinnati and Sac Republic are two of the three teams that might get MLS franchises. Nashville, the other one.
Kind of is how they're doing it, right? And it's worth noting as well. So Columbus were 20th in the table with 15,439. If you really did do top 20 attendance, you'd essentially have you'd lose Dallas. Dallas might get a pass because of the construction. Dallas and Rapids and Colorado would be out. Sorry, Dallas, Rapids, and Columbus would be out, and FC Cincinnati would be in as the 20th team.
Okay, and I have seen. We're going to get some emails about this, but so be it. I have seen enough DC United games to know that they do not have that many fans there every single time. I feel like that might be a product of the giveaways.
I forgot. Looking at these numbers, it never really matches up with what you see at Major League Soccer, is it?
No, I mean, because there's always famous
I've definitely been in a DC stadium and been like, there's like only a handful of thousands of people here, and it's reported as like 15.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that is worldwide, and it crosses sports.
I think MLS goes harder on it, though. I really think MLS is cheating the numbers a bit.
I think that's true, but I do think other clubs in the Premier League, and I'm going to leave it there, definitely inflate some numbers because it makes it look better, because otherwise it would be kind of questionable as to why they're not selling out their stadium when they have a lot of big-name players on their team. We'll say that. And then
but I'd say this off air?
Sure. The famous one from a couple years ago was the Washington Redskins, or the Washington Professional Football Team, if you prefer that. They had a sellout. They had a sellout game. I forget what the capacity of their stadium is, but it's something absurd. And it was sold out, and there were like maybe 15,000 people there. Like, it was so many empty seats, and it was just comical that it was listed as a sellout, because technically it is, because all the tickets are accounted for, but nobody goes. Doesn't really qualify it as a sellout, I'd say. So
to answer Shay's question briefly, to sum up, I would say it's not a good idea, but it's basically what we're doing.
Yep.
It really is, right? In real life, this is what we're doing.
So it's not a good idea, but you know what is a great idea?
What's that?
Adding Strelly insoles to your shoes.
So today's other sponsor is Strelly Speed Grip.
I'm genuinely excited to talk about this. In a way that, like I'm always excited to talk about advertisers, but this time, because we wore these Strelly insoles this past weekend, both of us did, and I don't know if this was a placebo effect. I don't know if this was just like when Ron in the Harry Potter books he thinks he's taking the good luck potion, and so he just like performs better. But I definitely felt like I was much more responsive, and my feet hurt way less at the end of an hour-and-a-half long game.
So the idea of the Speed Grip insoles is they are upgrades on your standard insoles for your soccer cleats, and they sort of grip your foot more tightly, and you get more traction, which means more speed, more power, and more control, because there's less sliding.
Yep.
Your foot can't slide around inside your cleat. That makes you faster.
And the thing, like, if you're wondering how, like, you can measure that or quantify that, I guess I can't quantify it, but I can say that I put them in an older pair of shoes that I refuse to get rid of because they're my favorite soccer shoes I own. But, like, the insoles had completely worn through on them. I didn't realize that until I popped the old ones out and was like, that's not good.
Yeah.
I put the new ones in. And I think part of why I felt like I was playing better is because I wasn't gripping my toes as much. They weren't like as curled as they would be.
Oh, do you do that? I don't know if I did that, but that makes sense.
I don't notice I'm doing it, but I was realizing afterwards that like my toes didn't hurt. And I think when I'm wearing the shoes before, I was definitely doing that a lot to try to get more traction, to make sure that like I was gripping the insole as much as I could, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing that with the Strellies, and that's why I think I was able to focus more, have less foot pain too.
Is it fair to describe the sensation of wearing them for the first time as weird? Like, it really felt like my foot was glued in there and like slightly pressurized and like literally gripped. And at first I thought, oh, maybe this is the wrong size or something, but I'd measured it correctly.
Here's a reference that isn't going to go. It felt like in Demolition Man, where like instead of airbags, they have the thing where the whole car just fills with foam and then you're like stuck in place. That's what it felt like. Like my foot just felt like sealed into my shoe.
But it really just takes, I'm not sure how the car thing works out in Demolition Man, but for my Speed Grip,
seems like it'd be a terrible thing.
It just took me a little while to be like, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
And now I understand it. But just the initial thing was like, whoa, this is weird.
But I also think the thing that I had not thought about before with these insoles is just that like they really can prolong the life of shoes, because like my favorite shoes I have are way more expensive than I would ever want to spend, way more expensive than I would want to spend on another pair of shoes. But putting new insoles in them made them feel like new shoes, so it kind of prolongs the boots a little bit more. So it's like, I would say, a cheaper alternative than having to go out and buy more top end shoes.
Well, thank you to Strelly for sending us some insoles, some Speed Grips, so that we could give them a run out. Really happy to recommend them and to advertise them. Listeners can get 20% off the Speed Grip insoles if they use code TSS at Strelly.com. I'm going to say 20% off is about $8 as well. So based on that, you can probably backwards calculate the price of the speed grip insoles. I like to leave a little mystery.
So thank you to
a little
Strelli.
Mathematical mystery.
I like it. Thank you to Strelli for sponsoring today's show. Again, Strelli.com, 20% off any order with the promo code TSS.
No more slipping and sliding. All right, next question today comes from Julie Nishimura Jensen. Julie wants to know, when a team takes a team photo before the start of the match, is there some etiquette about who stands where? I love this question.
Yeah.
What's the answer? I have an answer in my head, Taylor. What's your answer?
I don't think there is one. I think it's kind of completely up to the team.
There's one thing.
I think, well, okay, we'll talk about this. Because I kind of always assumed that they were required to do this by some sort of FIFA law that each team has to stand there and do a photo. As far as I can tell with like U.S. soccer, like it's just U.S. soccer promises that the team will do it so like photographers can get that photo. And they tend to do the like 5 and 6 or 6 and 5 formation when they do it. But there are teams that do not do that. One team specifically that chooses not to do that.
Which team chooses not to
Wales.
do that?
Wales were like famous this past qualifying campaign. You can find a gallery of it. They notoriously will do like 2 players in the back and 9 on the ground.
They were doing it to mess with the whole format, right?
Yes, or they'd have like 1 player standing over on the right, 1 player in the middle, and then they'd have like 9 on the so they would change like who was down and where, and then how many players were like standing and where that location was. They definitely tried to mess with people as much as they could.
They were like the Gary Shandling show, deliberately breaking the form.
Yes, exactly.
So the normal thing of like 6 in the back or 5 in front or whatever, the only like etiquette thing that I think, not a rule but an etiquette thing is, and this is from team photos I've been in as well, is taller players go in the back, shorter players in the front, just because that makes sense, right? Because then there's not going to be some big, tall beanpole Matt Miazga guy in the front row blocking the view of your left back.
Yeah. So I think that is definitely one. And then it is kind of about uniformity, right? So then you can't have half the team with like arms around each other and then the other half with arms like behind their back. It kind of has to be the same thing. Same thing if you're squatting down, it has to be like, are you like one hand on the ground, both hands on knees?
Yeah.
What are you doing there?
But I don't even think that that's like a rule or even an etiquette. It's more like a group thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I mean, I do it. I'm like, is everyone doing hands in front or hands behind? Hands by the side. I just copy the people around me, and you sort of end up. But if you watch a team taking a team photo, you'll see people slowly copy each other's stance, and it takes maybe 20 seconds for some uniformity to spread, and then the photo gets taken.
I bet that's for our adult league teams. I think for national teams and club teams that have to do it every game, they probably get into like, all right, like hands around shoulders, you guys like drop down, we're good to go.
Beforehand.
Yeah, I think so.
The only one extra bit of etiquette I would think is if it's with a trophy. You know, sometimes you get a team photo with a trophy. I think I've always seen captain in the middle holding the trophy.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only little extra bit of etiquette I can think of.
Yeah, I'd say so. And then you do have the outliers like USA Mexico and that World Cup qualifier where they just get the team photo together, but that's for obvious other reasons.
That was about just trying to cheer us all up, right?
A little bit.
Okay, so next question is from Tyler Steinhaus. Tyler wants to know, which current US men's national team player could you see managing the team in the future? I'm going to say, Tyler, this is both a great question and a really tough question.
It is. And I would add, though, that like I don't necessarily know if a current player needs to manage the national team because there is not always a great record of that working out. Just ask AC Milan because they've been through like 4 ex-players already, and now they're on their 5th, I think, with Gattuso.
It doesn't always make sense, right? No. Like I always remember Brian Robson, not Bobby Robson, Brian Robson, the former Man United and England captain. Everybody said he's a leader, he's going to be a manager, he's going to be the next manager of England. He was Terry Venable's assistant for a while and everyone was convinced he was being trained up for the job. Then he went off and managed Middlesbrough and it worked for like 2 years and then it was a disaster and then he like slowly sunk down the leagues. It turns out he just wasn't a good manager, right? You can't just like easily transfer what you think a player is like into what type of manager he will be or coach he will be. And in that way, I think it's really hard to judge who it's going to be. Yeah. That's my big caveat before we answer this question.
No, I'm with you because it's also just the case that like coaching isn't always fun. In fact, I would say it's not usually fun. Like it's a job and it requires a lot of discipline. It requires you to work long hours and watch lots and lots of soccer. And there's also people who would rather because like I feel like a lot of people probably thought, well, maybe not a lot of people, but I think some people thought like Rio Ferdinand, for example, would probably want to go into management at some point. But why do that when you can, like, you know, have a magazine and a recording studio and do media appearances? Like, that is the easier job. And so I think a lot of people tend to go that route.
He lost his wife recently, right? So he's had a thing where if you've got any major life issues, that's obviously an extreme example. You're not going to suddenly be like, all right, I'm going to go and take on this coaching job, right? You've got to have, like, a big, like, chunk of spare time capital to spend.
But I'm talking about like as soon as he retired from QPR, or even before he went to QPR, that he didn't do like the Ryan Giggs thing of sort of transition into a coaching role.
Yeah.
I think that was sort of like, I'd rather not have to do that. So I think with that said, I do have two players, and I don't really have much justification for this other than
I'm the same. That's why we had a big caveat at the start.
Right? Yeah. So I'm also taking the current U.S. national team slightly lightly.
Yeah, me too.
Because I'm going to say the one that came. I thought about a lot of players, and I've gone with DeMarcus Beasley.
I have to.
Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Why? So give me your reasons. Why DeMarcus Beasley?
I think it's because, number one, he's played all over. And
that's me too.
We tend to forget that
that suggests he's adventurous, right? That he's been to the Netherlands and Germany and Mexico and England, and he's all over the place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's been all over the place, so he has those connections. But I think about, and this is not the greatest endorsement, but remember when Bruce Arena was reappointed for the second time, when he was first appointed this past time? And
I was very optimistic.
Yeah, exactly. And there was the 2-minute video of him taking over training, and in that 2-minute thing, there were two different sequences in which you see him either making DeMarcus Beasley the focal point of a conversation, or it's him and Beasley talking off to the side, and it felt like Beasley was already that senior player, not just in terms of age, but in terms of his kind of reputation within the team. And I do feel like when you have those players who have that not prolonged, but long career, that's
I think Beasley's career was prolonged.
I think that factors into it. And then when I think he does command respect for everything he's done, he's had 4 different national team managers now. He's seen a lot.
So I agree with all of that. I genuinely do. But what I found myself doing, and it's the same as what you've done, is just thinking of older players. Right? So why isn't, for example, why aren't we thinking of
I have another one.
Tyler Adams as a potential long-term coach?
Because we don't know him yet.
But I've seen him sort of literally coaching people on the field at 18, which suggests long-term he's that type of player. You know what I'm saying?
Because I think if you're going younger, then it means that they're going to be a coach younger. In my mind, it's either they become a coach.
Too far away to imagine.
It's either become a coach at 40 or they're Julian Nagelsmann. It's something right, Julian Nagelsmann, yeah. And it's they're a coach at 28.
Yeah,
and I don't see Tyler Adams becoming a coach at 28. And with that in mind, it's weird to say well, he's 18 now, and when he's 40, that's a big jump. I would say in terms of more current players, though, the one that I could see doing it, and again, I don't know why, but I could, is Alejandro Bedoya.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think that's just because he was the mashed potatoes when we did our Thanksgiving show for me, because he's always there. He kind of seems to be, no matter who's in charge, he seems to be included in the roster. And to me, that speaks to he's a chemistry guy, he's a locker room guy. But we've also seen him be sort of feisty at times. There's a couple shots at, I think it was Hope Solo, maybe Abby Wambach, I forget. But he's kind of not afraid to get out there and kind of call people out. I think he got it with Josie Altidore as well. Yeah. And I think you kind of have to have that feistiness to be a national team manager, to kind of back yourself and believe in yourself. And then, he too has that experience. Scandinavia, France, Scotland. He's been around. He's got those connections too.
The other two guys I listed were Michael Bradley and Jermaine Jones, partly because they kind of started coaching the U.S. national team during Copa America Centenario.
Yeah.
Do you remember those scenes?
I think kind of the reason why I went down that Rio Ferdinand route is because I feel like that's what Jermaine Jones is going to do as well. I just if you look at just as an example, if you look at his Instagram feed, it's always
his kids doing
his kids surfing and feeding horses, and he doesn't say what you want about Jermaine Jones. He strikes me as a family man, and I don't know if he wants to take all that time away and be away from his kids. And I also just don't know, I haven't seen a lot of him sort of taking those leadership roles outside of what you talked about with the national team. And I think that's sort of because he was no one else is going to do this. I guess I'll do it. I haven't seen him sort of do that thing of the Ryan Giggs thing of step in and be an assistant manager or try to transition his game.
I mean, the thing to watch is who takes assistant coach roles in Major League Soccer, right? That's when you know who's sort of on the path to coaching.
Yeah.
But the thing with Jermaine Jones, the reason I raise him is that video that he put out when he was talking about we've got to get players over to Europe.
That's a really good point.
He just seems to me like someone who's thinking about these things and has strong feelings about these things, which means he might be motivated to do something about it. But then the evidence of his Instagram is that he's kind of going to, at some point, retire. I'm assuming he's got money stashed away that he can kind of kick back for a while and enjoy life in California.
And maybe become an analyst is maybe what he's looking at. Who
maybe,
knows?
Yeah.
The Bradley thing,
that's
the weird one, because I think given what's happened lately, I think he would have been my first answer.
He would have been both our first answers, a year ago?
Yep.
2 years ago. Yeah.
And I think there are a variety of reasons why I don't have him as one of my obvious candidates. I think it's because I haven't, I think a part of it is that you have to, look at the player and think, do they really seem to, really love playing it? Do they want to be around it a lot? And I just feel for some reason, it just feels like Bradley's a little bit sort of tired of it, I guess. And I think also
he's also made bank, right? He has absolutely made a ton of money and won't need to do it.
Yeah. And I also think if you're constantly getting booed by people, like maybe that doesn't make you want to then be like, well, you know what? I'll lead the national team.
Maybe it's good prep for coaching the national team.
It might well be. It's a weird thing, and I don't know why, but I just feel like right now he's not a person that I would be like, I think he probably wants to be the national team manager. I think he probably wants to focus on his playing career, and then we'll see what comes next. But I don't see him being like, yep, this is definitely what I want to do.
Can I end with an interesting one, which was I kind of expected it to be Landon Donovan for a good while because he kind of hinted at it. But the most recent thing that he keeps saying is, I might do some coaching, but only at youth level. So it seems like Landon Donovan wants to coach, doesn't want to coach sort of in the spotlight, just wants to do the good, quiet work of, helping young players improve.
Yeah. The other one that I thought about a little bit was Josie Altidore. But I feel like Josie Altidore is going to go out and do interesting things when he retires. And I think about that like I would compare him roughly to like a Steve Nash almost, where he's going to get involved in other things. And I say that
it's the Josie Altidore Foundation, I believe.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I say that for two reasons. One, from like my limited interactions with him, I think he doesn't love dealing with the press. He doesn't really love that spotlight, strangely enough. Like I've definitely seen him sort of happily walk past the mix zone as other people are talking because he doesn't really want to deal with it.
Same for Dempsey, right? Dempsey's a little shy, doesn't really want to spend a lot of time talking to anyone.
Yeah, so I can't.
Maybe that's just me.
Dempsey, for me, it's more about he wants to be a player, and I can't imagine him being like I imagine him being the coach. He's like, I'll do it. I'll get out there and show you how it's done. But I think the other thing for Altidore, and I don't know why this sticks in my head.
Dempsey would be the coach who'd be like, why can't you just do a great turn like
exactly.
I do?
Just do what I do.
What's wrong with you?
But I also think with Josie, again, I don't know why this like sticks with me. But there was the video, I forget who it was with, but where he was like eating breakfast with like 4 other African American players, and they were talking about what it's like to be like an African American athlete in the U.S.
Yeah, not all players. It was journalists as well.
Yeah,
but it was about like essentially blackness in American soccer.
Was another one.
Yeah,
and for some reason, the one that I think you pointed this out is that he orders like avocado on toast, and then like everybody kind of follows suit. And I don't know why.
Because he was the most famous person at that table.
I guess so,
right?
But to me,
he's more famous than Lynn Williams.
I just feel like
I don't know if he's a better striker.
I feel like he's just gonna be a trendsetter, man. I feel like he's just gonna be out there like doing interesting stuff.
He started the avocado on toast thing.
I mean, in my mind, I know a lot of people are doing that, but like I just feel like he's gonna like suddenly own like an art installation, and it's gonna be like, whoa, Josie Altidore's doing art now. Like I didn't see that coming. Like I don't know. He just seems
he's gonna be an avocado magnate.
Yes.
Magnet.
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
And I think for
Magnate.
He's also one of those guys who's been playing for a very long time, and I could see him being like, I'm ready to step away and try other stuff.
I mean, there's also the danger, so we should probably wrap this up and move on to the final question, but there is a danger that players like Altidore and Bradley, again, have made so much money that, as we're kind of seeing in England, that players don't want to go into coaching because they don't need to. It used to be that after your playing career was over, you became a manager because you had to keep working.
Yep.
Players don't need to do that these days, especially if you've had that DP money.
They sure do not.
Yeah. Final question comes from Anthony Vanden Heuvel. You ready? Mm-hmm. Anthony asks, what would you suggest to someone who's in their mid-20s and looking to get back into playing soccer? So first of all, plenty of time, mid-20s, right? Anthony says, I used to play when I was younger, then life got in the way, and now I'm looking to get back into it. Only problem is there isn't any sort of league in my town, which he says is rural Kansas, pretty much the middle of nowhere, and only a couple of friends are interested, remotely interested. Kicking a ball into a wall/empty net is only fun for so long, sad face emoticon.
Right. So I thought about this, and I think the answer is start easy. Because what I think people think of when you say, like, hey, you want to get together and play some soccer? You think of, like, do I want to run for 90 minutes and, like, play intense, small-sided games? No, I don't want to do that. Like, that sounds like a lot. So I think start easy. I think start with something like soccer tennis or soccer golf, which some golf courses will let you do that. Like a par 3 course will let you just play with a soccer ball.
Yeah.
You can kick it and try to like hit
foot
the pin.
golf, right? It's called foot golf.
Yeah, there you go. And I think that's a good way to get people involved. Like, hey, you want to go kick a soccer ball and play? Like, make it a little bit different than people might have ever played before, and I think you'll get more interest. I also think the game that I played throughout my entire high school career was one touch. I think I've gotten you to play that before, which sounds very intense.
In England, it's called headers and volleys.
Okay.
Simple as that.
But it's basically, if say you get 5 people, it's essentially one of you's in goal. You can't score inside the 6-yard box unless it's like a phenomenal goal. But basically, everybody only has one touch. So I'll pass the ball to you. You pass the ball back to me. I'll lift it up, and then you have to hit it out of the air.
Yep.
But if you
see why we call it headers and volleys.
Yeah, but if you double touch it, then you're in goal. If you shoot wide, then you're in goal. And I forget there's another rule too.
It's a really good, like, because it adds a sort of really heavy, high risk, high reward thing. Like if you score in headers and volleys or one touch, you're a hero. If you miss, you're in goal.
Yeah,
so you really have to take a risk to do it, and it builds up some bravery, and it has an interesting like psychological element to it.
And I think
it's fun is the other thing.
And I think we'd play it like horse, and then I think if you get that, then I think we would do butts up. So there's always that element of it too. But I think that all sounds like it's intense, but the point is that you don't have to move.
No, it's fun. It's fun because you can laugh at the person who misses, or you can applaud the person who scores.
Right.
I would also say the way I used to do it is we played against a big wall, a giant brick wall with a goal painted on it, so that if you miss, it comes back.
Yeah.
At least you're not chasing it down a hill afterwards.
Yeah. But what I'm getting at though is that like when I say like it's one touch and I pass to you and you pass back and then I lift it up and you volley it, that sounds like this intense like, oh, so we have to know how to play one touch soccer. No, I mean literally like we would stand still and it would be like, I'll just pass to you. Yeah. Like it's basically you can just kind of take your time. You don't need to run very much, but it's a good way just to kind of basically we would use it as like a social event where like 8 of us would just be kind of like chatting while playing this game and you can kind of like have fun with it.
So you're saying to Anthony like ease everybody in by doing that.
And then I think a point that you have made to me time and time again, just like not about our show, but like about life, is that like if you're going to do something, keep it scheduled. And so I think, say you're going to do soccer golf or you're going to do soccer tennis or one touch, be like, all right, we're going to be doing it Saturday at noon. And then like make it that every Saturday or something like that. Because as soon as you start being like, well, we'll see next week, then you've got to like adjust it to people's schedules. But if you're out there and like no one shows up, juggle for a little bit and then go home. Yeah,
so this was going to be my answer. My answer was just going to be to organise some soccer games, but I actually think meeting to play soccer tennis or one touch / heads and volleys or whatever.
Or get a Fuji.
Yes. See our pre-roll for details. But I think the key thing is whatever you decide to do, it sounds like, Anthony, the only way to make it happen is to be the organizer. Like, it sounds like no one else is going to step up and make this happen. It's only going to happen if you make it happen. So, yeah, pick a thing you're going to do.
I feel like you're doing a lot of work to not say if you build it, they will come.
If you build it, they will come.
You're really dancing around that
Do
one.
it in a cornfield.
Exactly.
You just decide when it's going to be, decide what it is, and tell people it's happening. Don't email a bunch of people and say, hey, would you be interested in this? Email people and say, this is happening at this time, at this place. Send an email. A couple of days later, if you haven't heard back, follow up. It's almost like a sales job you've got to do where you've got to organize it, push it, take full responsibility for following up and making sure people get there. Do it the first week, see how many people you get, build on it, and you can eventually, if you build it, they will come, and then more will come because it's a thing that's happening.
Yes.
Yeah?
And I think incentivizing it can't hurt either. So being like, and I might have some beers afterwards.
Well, we've done this, right? Like I organised a pickup game this past weekend by doing basically that, emailing people and saying, this is happening. Come on. It's easier in Richmond where a bunch of people play soccer, but you can start small in the town that Anthony's in, and you can be the person that makes a game happen. It could grow into a league. Like 10 years from now, it could be the Anthony van den Heuvel League. Right?
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but it works.
The Heuvel League?
Yeah. There we go.
I'm in Division 3 of the Heuvel League. You could be like that.
Sure.
It sounds a bit too much like the Human League.
Or Rob Hubel.
Okay, thank you to Patrick, Shelley, Julie, Tyler and Anthony for today's questions. If you'd like to leave a question for us to possibly answer, it's at totalsoccershow.com/questions. If you subscribe to the Total Soccer Show, if you support us at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one question a month on TSS. But worth noting, we don't only answer the $10 questions. It's always a mix.
It is. I have to say, though, like I very much enjoyed answering all these questions, but Julie Nishimura-Jensen's question is one of the ones that, like, it's the type that I love, where I was like, well, it's up. I don't know the answer to this. Like it's one of those that you don't really think about because you just kind of assume. Yeah. But then when you pause for a minute, you're like, I have no idea what the protocol is, or even if you have to do a team photo. Yeah. I got to go read some stuff.
So actually, is this maybe a tip for people who want their question answered on the show? Ask us something cool like that. Like a lot of people, honestly, will like send us their US national team starting 11 lineup and say, what do you guys think? Mark, yep. But we talk about that so much all the time. We can't then consider each person's individual 11. And it's not that interesting to list an 11 and then say, I like this, I don't like that, right? Yeah. So we much prefer these sort of, I don't know what the word for this is. It's the stuff around soccer, maybe.
I would say basically don't be afraid to feel foolish because we don't think you're foolish.
There are no stupid questions.
No, they're genuinely
just our stupid answers.
And what I don't like is like, I remember me in high school where I didn't get a concept and I would sort of be asking questions around it because I didn't want to say, I don't get this broad concept, but I feel stupid because everybody else seems to. But the teacher would have much preferred you to just ask that question so that they know you get it. And I feel like it's the same thing here. Like, don't be afraid to be like, but why are there 11 players? Or like, because that's not a stupid question to me. That's more like, I actually don't know why it's 11.
You've often said that your wife Margaret will ask you something while you're playing soccer, and it'll be something very basic, but also something that you've never really thought about why that happens, and so it'll be accidentally very, very interesting.
Yes, and I feel like the first time she asked it just ended with like, it just is. I don't know. Yeah,
we won't do that on the show. We'll do some research and we'll get the answer to you.
And I think when I told you that story, you're like, you're a great husband.
Okay, we have 11 reports from the Total Soccer Show.
Oh, it might be 12.
Scouting Network.
11 plus 1. We got a sub in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Who's up first, Taylor?
Jeff Markman scouting Reece Nelson, 17-year-old English midfielder at Arsenal.
The future?
Jeff, great report in advance. Nelson scored the game winner for Arsenal's U23s against Porto B in the Premier League International Cup, whatever that is, says Jeff. Less notably, for only the second time in Europa League group play, Nelson did not start at right wing back for the Gunners, with returning senior players Callum Chambers and Denny Welbeck getting looks instead. And what is definitely not a coincidence, Arsenal also lost for the first time in the competition, falling 1-0 away to FC Köln, but still guaranteeing a top-of-group finish thanks to friendly results elsewhere.
Hashtag play your Reece. John Fernandez is scouting Borja Mayoral, the 20-year-old Spanish striker for Real Madrid. John says Mayoral came on as a substitute for Madrid in their 6-0 win over Apoel Nicosia, in the Champions League, and also got a few late minutes in Madrid's 3-2 win over Malaga. He did, however, get two starts. I jumped ahead a word. He got 2 starts for Spain's. Starts for Spain's, that's a Spart. Spain's under-21s in their Euro qualifiers. A 1-0 win against Iceland and a 5-1 demolition of Slovakia. Mayoral scored in the 86th minute of that one, though most of the attention will be on Dani Ceballos, who managed a hat-trick and is going in the Scout Network.
I'm going to assume he also sparked for Spain. Ira Jersey scouting Ashley Sanchez, 18-year-old American left winger for UCLA. Ashley got the MLS assist. Ira begrudgingly put that one in quotes for the first of UCLA's 3 goals in their win against Princeton to take them to the College Cup semifinal against Duke this coming Friday. Ashley played most of the match but was wearing a knee wrap and was limping a bit. We'll see what happens there. She had several good looks on net and made many penetrating passes.
All right, if you want more about UCLA, listen to this week's Top Draw Soccer Show where we have an interview with the UCLA head coach. Colin Johnson is scouting Jan Fiete Arp, the 17-year-old German forward for Hamburg. Colin says Arp started...
You went full pronunciation.
I sure did. Arp started in Hamburg's 3-0 win over Hoffenheim this past weekend. His skills were on display. He drew fouls, held up the ball, linked play with intelligent passing, and had 2 quality shots on goal. We saw all of these, right? Because we were looking for Bobby Wood. He did straight up whiff on a good chance, but then redeemed himself. He totally redeemed himself seconds later when he drew 2 defenders to him, thereby opening space that led to an own goal.
I feel like Colin was giving him the benefit of the doubt there, but sure. John Adams, not that one, scouting Shane Harrison, 20-year-old English striker for Tottenham. Harrison opened the scoring for Spurs in their Premier League 2 match against Man City. Keziah Sterling doubled the lead before Phil Foden, yes, that one, pulled one back. A second-half hat-trick from Lucas Nemecha? Yeah. Mecha. Sealed City's 4-2 win. Quite a comeback there for Man City.
Do we have a Phil Foden scouting report in here?
We do not, that I saw.
I'll be following up with the Phil Foden scout. Okay, Ed De Horatius is scouting Federico Bernardeschi, the 23-year-old Italian midfielder for Juventus. Ed says a rough go of it for Fede. Italy were knocked out of the World Cup. He wasn't named to the Champions League squad, and he's been nursing a right quad injury, which has kept him from playing for Juventus, including in their 0-0 Champions League draw with Barcelona and their most recent Serie A game against Crotone, which Ed was watching while typing this report. Good double tasking.
Yep. Jeff and Sam Huffman scouting Mukwele Akele, 20-year-old American midfielder/winger for Villarreal C, which is in Spain's 4th division. He's back, say Jeff and Sam. Mukwele, who had been out due to an undisclosed injury, parentheses, by undisclosed, we mean, man, it is hard to get good info about players in the Spanish 4th division. He saw game action for the first time in over a month as he subbed into this weekend's 2-1 win over UD Alzira. That marks his 7th appearance for the C team this season.
Come on, Mukwele. Todd Ito is scouting Takafusa Kubo, the 16-year-old Japanese midfielder for FC Tokyo.
Might be my favorite name in the scouting report.
Yeah, on Saturday, Kubo made his first appearance in the J-League. First ever? Okay, Kubo made his first appearance in the J-League, coming on as a second-half sub in FC Tokyo's match against Sanfrecce. He played a nice through ball that resulted in a shot on target and had a shot of his own after a nice run through the middle of the pitch. I was thinking like that the whoever read that out really underplayed it, and then I realised it was me reading it out. It should have been Cooper made his first appearance in the J League. There we go, fixed it.
I'm just happy that you got the difficult pronunciation this round with Crotone and because Sanfrecce as well. I was like, is that? Wait, what?
It's tempting to pronounce it Italian style, which is what I did, and probably incorrectly.
I think I just did it there too. Yeah. Up next, Alex M. scouting Cameron Carter-Vickers, 19-year-old American centre back for Sheffield United on loan from Tottenham.
Oh, I know what's coming.
It's not great.
No.
CCV started for Sheffield on Tuesday against Fulham in a 5-4 loss. He was subbed off in the 58th minute after a few defensive miscues that led to the first Fulham goals. These include a bad pass to the goalkeeper, saw that, it was bad, and a slip that gave space for a shot from distance. He also let a defender slip behind him for the third goal and was visibly upset he didn't receive any help. In Saturday's draw against Birmingham, CCV started and was subbed off in the 68th minute. Sheffield was much better defensively, the only Birmingham goal coming on a wonder goal, and they currently sit third in the championship.
Worth remembering, Cameron Carter-Vickers is very, very young. He is
true.
19 years old. For a centre-back, especially, I feel like the hierarchy of
Better with age.
being young, it goes goalkeeper, then central defender.
Agreed.
So even if he's making horrible mistakes like he did, I saw the footage of this. It's essentially a back pass that he accidentally sort of volleys into the floor, so it just very slowly bounces back to his keeper, and so Fulham score. It's a horrible mistake. He's going to learn. He's going to be fine.
And remember, the greatest wisdom of all time comes from Butters from South Park, with the point of the reason why you have the really sad, depressing moments is so that you feel that much better when you have the happy moments.
Oh, Butters. But Butters never has any happy moments.
Well, that's true.
That's why he's Cameron Carter-Vickers, not Cameron Carter-Butters.
There you go.
Yeah.
That should be a shirt.
JFAM is scouting Samuel Shoshua, the 18-year-old English forward for Tottenham.
I genuinely want that to be a shirt now. Can we get Butters wearing a Sheffield United jersey?
Jay says, last week, Tottenham's U23s beat Dortmund 3-1, and Shoshua managed to get a goal and an assist and help set up Tottenham's third goal. His performance was so impressive that one match report stated that he might be technically superior to Dele Alli and was the clear man of the match. Get him on that plane.
Bold statement. Andrew Baird scouting Josh Perez, 19-year-old American winger on loan at Livorno from Fiorentina. Perez has now appeared in 3 straight matches for Livorno, most recently coming off the bench as a 67th minute substitute in their 1-0 loss to AC Pisa, the Leaning Tower of, also nearby, on Sunday in the Derby della Terreno. The loss is Livorno's first of the season, and though Perez wasn't able to help the club find an equalizer, he was singled out by his manager in the post-game comments as having a good overall performance. Do
you feel like Perez is slightly forgotten in terms of American teenagers we're excited about?
No, because Andrew's doing a really good job of scouting him.
No, not within the Total Soccer Show and not within the Scouting Network. But I'm talking about in the broader, national soccer conversation. I feel like he's a Fiorentina Serie A player who's a teenager. He's on loan in Serie C, is it? That Livorno are in? But he's still potentially a big, big name.
Yeah, I think it's because he wasn't released by Fiorentina, so he hasn't been able to attend as many.
We could have been raving about him after a U20 World Cup performance.
There it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, Zach Lippert is
don't
scouting.
Be sad, buddy. It's okay.
Zach Lippert is scouting Izzy Brown, the 20-year-old English striker on loan at Brighton from Chelsea. Zach says, good news and bad news for Izzy Brown. He's been slowly increasing the number of minutes per games that he gets, but he's still very rarely getting on the ball. His biggest impact in the past 2 games against Manchester United and Stoke was a tackle on the edge of the box in the 90th minute against Stoke. Thumbs up to him for good defence, but not the kind of thumbs you want to be giving to a striker.
No.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you to Jeff, John, Ira, Colin, John, Ed, Jeff and Sam, Todd, Alex, Jay, Andrew and Zach for today's scouting report.
It's good listening, buddy.
If you'd like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network and support the Total Soccer Show, it is totalsoccershow.com/join. There are people who are waiting for their assignments. I apologise, I didn't get to it over Thanksgiving. Honestly, I had some freelance stuff that I was behind on. I had to finish. It will get done within the next 24 hours. Within the next 24 hours, I'll be sending scouting reports. I'm saying it on the show to hold myself to it.
I see.
This is like a note to myself that I have to do.
But I feel like at this point, you might have to edit the show, so then it's up to you as to when you choose to release this show.
Yes, if you don't hear this part, then you won't know. All right, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, we'll be back tomorrow. There's a lot to talk about. There's been some Premier League games Tuesday and Wednesday. There's also going to be MLS playoffs on Wednesday night and Thursday night. #SaveTheCrew.